You'll remember earlier in the week we told you that there was the first Capitol Hill defendant from January 6th who was found not guilty, and it was because Capitol Hill police, at least it was plausible, according to the judge, that he was waved in by Capitol Hill police. They said, come this way, sir. He didn't destroy anything, didn't attack anyone. So he was not guilty on all charges. So usually the government, I bring this up just because the government doesn't usually lose these kinds of cases. I mean, when the federal government decides that you're going down and you go to trial, just understand, Clay, correct me if this is off. It's something like this, right? About 98% of cases at the federal level are plea bargained, right? So about 98% of them never even see the inside of a court. And then I don't know what the stats are, but I know the federal government wins a vast majority of the federal cases, criminal cases that it brings, right?
No doubt. It is. The feds do not lose very often. And that's partly because they have the resources to bring to bear on these cases that are infinitely more committed. And also they tend to bring charges in cases that they feel very confident about. So with that in mind, what just is happening in Michigan, and this has just come out, so we're just giving you breaking news here. I'm reading from Julie Kelly, who we've had on the show before, to talk about the January 6th defendants. The jury in the Whitmer trial, this is the kidnapping case in Michigan. If you guys remember, it received a ton of attention. The idea that these right-wing zealots were attempting to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. They have been unable to reach a full verdict on a lot of these charges, but many of them are coming back now not guilty. And I'm reading from Julie Kelly, the alleged ringleader of the kidnapping trial. They couldn't reach a verdict on conspiracy, even conspiracy to kidnap. One of the defendants not guilty on kidnapping. Also, in terms of gun charges, not guilty on the gun charges. So what is appearing to be the verdict of this jury is that effectively they bought the argument that the FBI had entrapped these men to a large extent, again, based on what is just coming down, the verdict in the Michigan Governor Whitmer kidnapping case. It appears that many of these jurors have bought the idea that the FBI was entrapping these guys. And this is going to be a big story, and I bet come Monday, we'll talk about it in greater detail, but this is the final, 20 minutes of the show. These details just coming down.
This is from last summer from BuzzFeed News. An examination of the evidence in the case by BuzzFeed reveals that some of those informants acting under the direction of the FBI played a far larger role than had been previously reported. Working in secret, they did more than just passively observe and report on the actions of the suspects. Instead, they had a hand in nearly every aspect of the alleged plot, starting with its inception. The extent of their involvement raises questions as to whether there would have even been a conspiracy without them. For BuzzFeed to write this, because remember, folks, in the early days of this, Gretchen Whitmer was an extreme lockdowner. Okay, she was one of the worst Fauciite disciples. Literally had a Fauci pillow behind her during cable news hits to show how much she worshipped St. Fauci. Clay, right? I'm not, that is 100% fact. She had a Fauci crocheted pillow behind her. And then the news of this story of the kidnapping of Gretchen Whitmer by right-wing radicals. It turns out actually their politics were even far murkier and less clear than that. But it immediately turned into anybody who opposes Gretchen Whitmer is one of these right-wing radical insurrectionist Trumpers, right? They used it as this attack on the right. So the left piled on these guys right away and said that it was Trump's fault, that people are threatening violence, not even threatening violence, plotting violence against the sitting governor of Michigan, all this stuff. And then when the actual evidence came out, it was just a very different case than that. Clearly, two of these guys were found not guilty. All charges.
Yes.
And that's a huge, just from a prosecutorial standpoint, Clay, right? Like this is a federal prosecutor's nightmare to lose a case like this.
Well, and it also makes it hard, Buck, to bring additional charges in a future case because you just lost two of the people that were involved in your case are not guilty. So how are you going to prove that the other two guys are guilty? We've actually got, she's done a great job covering this. Julie Kelly just called in. She's been great at helping to defend some of these people on January 6th and tell their story. Julie, we're trying to contextualize exactly what happened. We appreciate you being flexible because we saw you tweeting all about it. What happened in this Whitmer trial in the last 30 minutes or so? What has the jury officially determined?
The jury in Grand Rapids did not hand down a single conviction in the alleged Whitmer kidnapping plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer in 2020. You had four men who faced numerous federal charges, including a charge that would have landed them in prison for the rest of their lives, conspiracy to kidnap. They also were charged with conspiracy to use a weapon of mass destruction. Not a single conviction. Two men were completely acquitted. The other two men, including the alleged ringleader, Adam Fox, the jury was deadlocked on their guilt, so the judge declared a mistrial on their two cases. It's hard to overstate what a stunning blow this is for the U.S. Department of Justice, a well-deserved blow. And I'm telling you, Clay and Buck, some people need to answer for what they did to not just to these men, but to the American people by arresting these men, blaming this concocted plot on Donald Trump, and producing all these damaging headlines for him as millions of Americans were voting in the 2020 presidential election. This is, as I tweeted earlier, a bigger scandal than Russiagate. This is yet another example, a more flagrant and possibly far more damaging example of the FBI once again interfering in a presidential election to sabotage Donald Trump.
Julie, can you just tell us, thanks for being with us, Buck, can you tell us some of the, I read just an excerpt from, I think it was last summer, where even the Democrat lib media started to say, yeah, this Whitmer case is actually a little shakier than perhaps we had anticipated, or, whatever, right? Doesn't matter. They're obviously trying to, come up with a certain narrative. What sort of things were these informants? I mean, why did this case fall apart, essentially?
Well, I really have to credit this judge and this jury. They took almost 5 days to very carefully deliberate all of the evidence before them. And I'll tell you, the judge who I really liked, especially after listening to D.C. district court judges, I don't want to say concealed, but he ruled on behalf of the government in a number of cases that withheld really egregious examples of how the FBI agents and their informants were putting this whole plot together and trapping these men, inducing them to try to commit crimes. But there were at least a dozen FBI agents, undercover agents, and informants involved in this. You basically had one FBI asset per defendant. There are also men who face state charges. These men didn't even know each other before the FBI got involved. They were going on excursions and trips that were planned by the FBI, that were paid for by the FBI. The lead informant, a man named Dan Chappell, was compensated at least $60,000 from the FBI. The other informant is a convicted felon with a rap sheet in 9 states who committed at least 2 other crimes, but he was paid about $20,000 from this FBI. I mean, you guys, if you had the best fiction writer in the world, you could not write up the corruption, the scandal, and really just the depravity of this FBI operation that spanned several states, by the way. It wasn't just in Michigan. This was run out of FBI field offices in numerous states.
Julie, I appreciate, again, you coming on with us in quick notice here as this story is just broken. The other thing to keep in mind is Gretchen Whitmer is up for re-election in 2022, and there's some talk that she could potentially be a contender in 2024 if Joe Biden is not running. This is going to be a significant campaign issue, I would think, in the state of Michigan because she gained a lot of sympathy over this coverage, the idea that someone was trying to kidnap her, and now all this evidence has come out, and a jury in Michigan has determined that there wasn't a crime committed at all by any of these 4 men so far.
That's exactly right. And, Gretchen Whitmer, if you rewind back to 2020, think about 2 years ago, she and Donald Trump were in a very public feud about her continuation of these very draconian lockdown policies in her state.
Yep.
So they were very vocal opponents of each other. So the question is, what did Gretchen Whitmer know? What was her complicity in this FBI sting operation? What came out in the trial is that the FBI had poll cameras and other laser devices around her cottage, which is where this kidnapping was supposed to occur. They already had her cottage under surveillance. She was not under any danger at any time, yet she did weeks of, days or a few weeks of interviews in October of 2020, blaming Donald Trump for this, inciting right-wing militias who wanted to kidnap and possibly kill her. These are the sorts of things she was saying as people were voting. We need to find out what she knew, how much of a part of this sting operation she was actually a part of.
Julie Kelly, fantastic. Oh, sorry, you got another
just
one.
One quick thing, Julie. I just wanted to know if you'd weigh in for a minute on the Matthew Martin of January 6th, that prosecution. He was acquitted earlier this week. I just wanted you to tell us about that.
Can we just take a quick moment and bask in some good news as far as the American justice system this week? Because we haven't had any in years. And so Matthew Martin, charged with the 4 most common misdemeanors related to January 6th. He opted for a bench trial before Trevor McFadden, who's a Trump appointee. And basically, the judge, after Matthew Martin's testimony, concluded that, yes, he had been waved into the building. But more than that, you had for the first time a U.S. Capitol Police official testifying under oath that they indeed stood by and allowed people into the building. They claimed they were overwhelmed. They couldn't prevent them from coming in. So they just stood by to make sure no one was hurt. This has huge consequences. In fact, a defendant today retracted his plea deal on these same charges based on what happened in court this week. So it's sort of a game changer for a lot of these cases.
Yeah, quite an insurrection when Capitol Hill Police are saying, right this way, go into this room, please. Julie, thanks so much for being with us and all your work on this. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you again about it soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Big news there. Glad we could get Julie on to break it all down for us. Our thanks, by the way, to Julie Kelly. This is a big story, Buck. This is a really big story that all of you heard about the kidnapping attempt on Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. It was a massive story, as Julie Kelly was laying out. The FBI basically entrapped these guys. 2 of them have been found not guilty. The other 2, the jury couldn't reach a verdict, meaning they were deadlocked. Buck, I don't know how the government is going to be able to bring the charges against the 2 guys that have not had a verdict rendered against them yet, because the other 2 guys got the not guilty verdict. It's going to be much harder to convict the 2 guys and say, well, if the other 2 were not guilty of a conspiracy, how do you have a conspiracy of the other 2, right? I mean, so I don't even know what the government is going to decide to do here.
It starts to look like persecution when you have 4 people accused, 2 not guilty, 2 hung jury, and then you go back as the federal, whether it is or not, by the way. I'm not, whether they're guilty or not, irrelevant. I'm talking about the optics of it. It looks like the federal government is deciding to keep going and going after certain people in what is obviously and by the way, this is not, it's one thing to talk about the federal government losing a case over, some kind of wildlife regulation issue or, you know what I mean? If it's something kind of minor or that, somebody could have gone to jail for a year. These guys were facing life in federal prison for this. So the fact that they went with this, it's rare to see something. And to be fair, the Capitol Hill guy, that's a big, I'm so glad Julie brought that up. That's a big difference in terms of the narrative, and it establishes that there were people who were waved in by the Capitol Hill police, but he was facing misdemeanor charges. Now, who's probably horribly treated and all the rest of it, and that's why we like to talk to you about these cases so that the word gets out. But these guys are facing life in prison,
no
and
doubt.
2 of them, and you got to think also, I mean, when you look at these kinds of charges, the federal government, they had all kinds of wiretaps, Clay. I mean, this is very similar to the kind of terrorism cases I used to work for the NYPD, for the intelligence division. And, you'd have wiretapping, text messaging, emails, all this stuff. With all of that documentary evidence, which they wouldn't go to trial without. That's why you have these informants there to get all that stuff, right? They still couldn't make it stick. That's a big problem.
could have significant consequences in the Michigan governor's race because, as Julie Kelly noted, what did Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who, let's be fair, tried to portray herself as a victim of a horribly dangerous and deadly potential kidnapping, and that gained her a great deal of sympathy in her state. And during the presidential campaign, she blamed Trump for these guys' behavior, which now 2 out of the 4 of them have been found not to be criminal at all. This is a major collapse and loss for the Department of Justice.
I think the Biden DOJ is a little jealous about all the hate that the CDC's been getting for being wrong about everything. So like, no, the Biden DOJ, we're the worst 3-letter agency. Just wait, the CIA will do something dumbass next week. Don't worry.